Hello. I'm going to keep my voice down slightly because I've actually got a friend of mine who's just couch surfing at the moment. He's in between homes. Sad reality, he works full time, makes good money, but the housing market at the moment is just so ridiculous. He's going to look at a place, I think this afternoon actually, but it's just impossible even for someone who works full time and earns good money to find property. It's just crazy. So anyway, he's out on my couch. He's still asleep. So because he had a hard day at work yesterday. And while I'm talking about my friend, I might as well just give a quick plug to his business. If you live in Perth and you're looking for a removalist, my friend who's on my couch, he's an amazing removalist. He offers very competitive prices. He is a Perth boy. He only employs locals. He's got his own truck. He does everything from, boxing up your stuff to actually moving it in, all the stuff in. He'll even take stuff to charities. If you want to donate some of your old stuff along the way. So he really offers like a full removalist service, and prices are very reasonable. So if you're interested at all in removalist services, I will leave a link to his Facebook, his Facebook business page in the description box, so you can check it out if you are going to be needing to move house fairly soon. Highly recommend it. I've used dodgy removalists before, and it's painful. Anyway, so I thought I'd do something different today because I actually just recently got these cards. I got them from. Can you see that? Yeah, I got them from Kmart, and it's just a set of cards that says entitled Soul Seeker: 100 Questions for Deeper Connection. And it was only $6, and so I bought it on a whim. Anyway, some of the questions are actually quite good, and I thought they might make interesting kind of prompts to podcast on. And I literally just split the deck and opened the first question that I came to, and that question was, why do we lie? So let me just give you a quick historic perspective on my own life and my history of truth-telling and lying. I think I learned to lie at a very young age. I think we all do. And for a long time, I believed that it was actually what you were supposed to do. I think something about my family environment, combined with the fact that I just saw everybody else doing it and getting good results, led me to have this very laissez-faire, ideals about lying. I really didn't think that there was anything wrong with lying. I really thought that lying was just something that you did to protect yourself, or something that you did because often people were asking questions of you not because they were doing something that was in your own best interests, but just, and so it was not only best practice, but the correct thing to tell them what they wanted to hear rather than tell them the truth. So yeah, I used to lie a lot, frankly. And it wasn't until I was in a relationship with a guy. The relationship only lasted about 7 months, but he was a really interesting guy. Actually, he was a very spiritual person, although not in any sort of traditional way, and not in a way that I could ever understand. But he had thought a lot about a lot of things that I'd never thought about. And one of the first things he said to me when we first started seeing each other was, I really hate liars. And he looked dead in my eyes as he said it, and my immediate thought process was, God, what have I lied about? You know. Anyway, the relationship ended, blah, 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 blah. But I continued to reflect on this whole question of like lying, and because he was also the first person to introduce me to the idea of lying to oneself. And I was like, 40, I think, at this stage. No, maybe not quite 40. Maybe I was in my late 30s, probably 38, 36, 37, 38, something like that. Approaching my, rearing up on 40. And so, sorry, that's my phone. Stupid thing. Oh, well, that was disturbing. I just got I'm pretty sure it was a spam call, but saying my mobile phone service will be deactivated in 2 hours, and then it said press 1 for English or 2 for Chinese, and then it just started speaking Chinese, and so I pressed 1 for English, and then the 1 for English just produced more Chinese. So where was I? I was talking about lying, that's right. Lying to yourself. Yeah, so he was the first person who ever introduced me to the idea that I might be lying to myself. And it had literally never even occurred to me. And by this stage, I'd had psychology sessions, many psychology sessions, with a couple of different psychologists. I'd read a lot of books and stuff. It had never ever been suggested to me before that humans lie to themselves. And of course, when he said, "Do you think maybe you're lying to yourself?" my response was, "No." But the more I reflected on it, the more I thought, well, of course I'm not going to be aware of the fact that I'm lying to myself, because I'm lying to myself, right? Of course I'm going to lie to myself about lying to myself. So anyway, after our relationship ended, and it was a pretty bad ending, and I was pretty upset for a while, but after I kind of got back on my feet, I spent a lot of time reflecting on different things that he'd said to me, and different things, aspects of, things that I guess that I'd learned about the relationship, and ways in which I'd grown even in spite of the circumstances of the relationship. And one of them was coming to this resolution that I needed to become aware when I was lying to myself. I needed to stop doing it. And also, I needed to delve deeper into the kinds of lies that I had told myself. And so I started with the relationship, because it was the most proximal. And I definitely lied to myself during that relationship with regards to, he would be asking me if I was if I was developing resentment towards him, and I was always like, oh no, from you better believe I was resenting him, and it would have been so obvious, and obviously that's always going to be unhealthy. If you have anger or resentment towards somebody, or even if even if it's not that strong, even if it's not that serious, but there's just, you have someone in your life and there's just something about them that is causing you to hold back, causing you to feel like you can't trust them, and there's someone that you want to trust and that you want to, get closer to, you really owe it to yourself to sort of delve into that deeper and try and figure out, okay, what exactly is it that I'm not getting from them that is causing me to feel like I can't truly trust them, and how can I then approach them in a non-confrontational, very sort of, amiable but still assertive way, and just let them know, hey, look, I feel like you're holding back, when I ask you about this, and that's your right, but I feel like you're responses to me previously when I've tried to ask you about it have been slightly, you know, you've been either just try to distract me from the question, or you've, been a bit misleading or whatever. I would rather if you just told me that wasn't something that you were able to talk about, than that you tried to sort of discombobulate, or what's the better word? There's a great word. My stupid brain. Sorry, it's not a stupid brain. I love my brain. It's just not quite as nimble as it once was. Obfuscate. Hard word to pronounce. Obfuscate. With how, in whatever manner, and people do this all the time. You ask them a question and then they produce some answer that's not actually an answer to your question. It's just skirting around the answer, and look, usually I will just take that as, okay, you don't want to answer the question. But when it comes to relationships that you're trying to build, and relationships that you feel have, the foundations of something that could be quite good, quite close, quite a close bond, a good connection, you really owe it to both yourself and the other person to persevere through that, because you deserve at the very least for them to be able to look you in the eye and say, I'm sorry, I'm just not comfortable talking about this yet, not just to try and blow you off with some other thing, So I think, like, the lying to yourself thing, it's so pernicious, like, and it's really subtle, and it's all coupled into the greater state of being in denial generally. And I spent many years of my life in denial about a lot of things. I suppose not that many, but, I certainly have spent periods of my life in denial. I think that we lie to ourselves to protect ourselves to a certain extent, but when we lie to ourselves regarding things like how we feel about other people, it's got to do with the fact that we don't want to believe that we are the sort of person who's harboring feelings of anger. We don't like the idea of that. That's not us. That's that's my mother, but that's not me. No, I don't do that. No, like if I get upset with someone, I like to just talk to them about it and work it out, and then resolve it. Most people will say that, but you'd be amazed how many people don't actually follow through. And I've been one of them historically. Confrontation is something that scares the shit out of me. I literally did not ever have any confrontation in my life whatsoever until I was in my mid-30s. Basically nothing, or early 30s. Nothing. And then, when I did have confrontation, didn't handle it well. And of course, depending on whomever it was I was with, the ramifications of that mishandling of confrontation became more and more severe. I've always just run away. That's just been my standard thing to do. If someone's upset with me, I just run away. If someone doesn't like me, I just run away. If I go to a restaurant and I don't like the food, I just never go back, I've never been one to confront issues head on, unless they're issues with myself. And even then, not always. You have to be in a certain frame of mind to do that sort of work with yourself, And that's probably true for this sort of thing as well, because what I'm talking about, when I think I've talked a little bit about the shadow before, shadow work, Jungian. It's one of Carl Jung's kind of main principles that he talked about with regards to something he calls individuation, which is basically like just bringing all the psyche, to completeness, and because we do suppress an awful lot of ourselves, and a lot of the times the stuff that we suppress is what he calls our shadow, which is basically like those characteristics of ourselves that don't sound very good, that we don't want people thinking that's how we are, so we pretend that it's not how we are, and we lie to ourselves, and we lie to other people, and we never address it. We just like push it away, and then the next time it shows itself, we do the same thing again. Shadow work's a whole thing on its own, but specifically on the question of like lying to yourself, I think that's a good place to start, actually, if you're interested in doing shadow work, or for that matter, just if you're interested in looking at your own life and your personal conduct. Because here's the thing about lying, and this is what it's taken me so long to realize this. Like, so it's taken me such a long time to realize this. Like, it's okay to lie, but as soon as you start lying to someone, you are immediately limiting the quality of the relationship that you can feasibly have with that person. It doesn't matter in how many other ways you try to make up for it. If you are lying to someone, or whether it be one big lie or many small white lies, I'd love to know who came up with that expression, actually. Like, sounds like a total like get out of jail free card, doesn't it? In fact, so many people have used that with me when I've said, that's a lie, and they're like, oh, it's just a white lie. Oh, it's just a white lie. Well, I didn't even realize that white. I mean, I know that white flags, white hackers. I mean, but I also associate the color white with like the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, it's. I mean, purity of a bride on her wedding day. It's a white lie. I don't know. Anyway, I'll have to look that up. But yeah. So if it's a million small lies, or not a million, but if it's regular small lies, or if it's one big lie, guaranteed, you are unfortunately blocking yourself. You're locking yourself away from the other person in some way, and it may not be in a significant way, or at least not the way that you look at it. But bearing in mind that even though most people will appear to accept your lies as the truth and move on and not question them again, especially if you're a fairly effective or seasoned or professional or accomplished liar, they'll believe you, or at least they'll appear to believe you. But on some level, they're probably thinking, yeah, but I wouldn't have asked the question if I didn't have a fairly good idea that I already knew what the answer was. And so don't think that they're not banking it away in their memory to a certain extent. And also people, even people who have no formal training in reading body language and all of those sorts of things, have an ability to. We all have an ability to read body language. We just may not have taken a formal course in it, you know. And you may think that you're a total poker face. I don't know, maybe you are. Some people are quite good at this. Not only poker players, but you know, but I think, you know, the most famous one is you know, Bill Clinton, you know, and that video has been like analyzed to death. You know, I did not have sexual relations with that woman, you know, and I mean, and body language experts have just gone to town with this because they're just like, he is so believable. He's been like, obviously before he delivered that speech, he had behavioral, you know, analysis experts, body language experts, everyone working with him to make sure that that everything was right, verbal and non-verbal. And he pulled it off really well. He did. And I mean, and he didn't even lie. He just was talking about it, you know, he was just defining sexual relations in a different way to what some people might define it. Not everybody thinks that blowjobs are count as sex. Some people don't think that anal sex counts as sex. If, you know, I mean, if you're willing to redefine like the meaning of like the terms, then you can pretty much like get out of, like, you know, admitting to anything. Yeah. Anyway, but you know, so Clint would have been coached. I mean, you know, without a doubt. I mean, I'm sure he was already a fairly effective liar, because I think that everyone who makes it to that status of governance in a country, especially one with a formalized democracy type thing, whatever you want to call it, like America, Australia, Great Britain, etc., where we in theory vote for our prime minister / president, and you know, but these guys, like, you know, I mean, Trump is like, this is why Trump was like such a look, I feel like, I can't believe I'm going to say this, breath of fresh air. fresh like polluted fresh polluted, like pretty horrible smelling air, actually. But you know, the very fact that he managed to come from left field, having never been in politics before, always been on the periphery of politics, but he had not done his hard time coming up, you know, coming up through the ranks as a politician, and and managed to just make a run for the presidency and win. That just never happens. I mean, and I'm sure that part of the dissent against him, at least in the early days, was largely based on the fact that he just hadn't played the game the way you're supposed to play it. And people don't like it when you try and take shortcuts. People don't like people don't like it when, you know, I mean, because there would have been a Republican candidate, and I don't follow US politics that closely, but there would have been a number of people who were, you know, senators or whatever in the Republican Party, who would have been thinking, yeah, it might be my time for nomination, eh? Like, I reckon I might get a go this year, much like Hillary Clinton was the year that Barack Obama got pulled from the, you know, Senate to and given the Democratic preference. That was Hillary's year. Hillary would have won that year. At the time, I thought I was all about Hillary Clinton. I thought she would have been a good president. Roll around to the year Trump got elected, and I was just like, do not give that woman the job. And I think my main reason for feeling that way is because by that stage, she'd served another 8 years in the Senate. She had, you know, after her husband was president, she then got into federal politics and worked her way up. So she already had a fair few years working, in the playing the game of federal politics. But I think that when you are serving when you are a senator serving under the leadership of a head of state that took your job in your mind because it was her turn, it was her turn. And everyone knew it was her turn. And then along came Obama. I think, bitter, twisted, jaded, yep. And I think so by the time it got around to time, when she was actually like running against Trump, like I was just looking at Hillary Clinton and just thinking like, when did she become so fake and just vacuous? Like it seems to happen to so many politicians. Really, like they start out and they're real people. And, sure, they give like for the big speeches that they give, like the, from the Oval Office or, if you're in Australia, they tend not to do those so much. But a lot of them are scripted, sure. But they also used to you had a familiarity with them from, through other sort of mechanisms and means, and they would go to sporting events and they would go to this and they would go to that, and it wasn't just all about display of show for the people or trying to win votes or anything. It was just like them living their life. You got the sense that they were real people, and and for some of them you got the sense like that they really did get into politics because they wanted to try and change things for the better. It just seems like by the time you actually get to the point where you are in a position to be elected to the head of state role, you have been pushed into a box that is so small that there's no room for radical or independent thinking at all. Like you just literally have to toe the party line, because at least in Australia, if you don't, then your own party can kick you out. We've had this happen so many times. If you actually look up online how many prime ministers Australia has had since we were colonised, and then divide that number by 4, which is the theoretical term of a single prime ministerial run, right? But it is possible to serve 2 terms. So we've had a number of prime ministers, even in my lifetime, that have served 8 years, because they've been re-elected. If you actually divide the number of total number of people who've been prime minister by 4, the numbers already don't add up. You've already got way more than 1 per 4 years. And that is because it often happens that someone gets elected and then 1 year, 2 years, maybe if they're lucky, something like that, later, internal party politics will just overthrow them and they'll resign. And I get it. Like if your own party, aren't willing to back you, then that obviously means that as the head of state, you are going to have trouble being effective because you don't have the votes in the House. You can't rely on the oppositional party to back you. Some of them may, but you can't rely on that. You're relying on people in your own party to back you. And so if a majority of those people are saying, no, we're not going to back you, then essentially you're forced to resign. And so that happens, and then the people responsible for this, like what I can only describe as a coup d'etat, political coup d'etat, then they get to decide who they put in, who becomes prime minister. It's happened so many times. It's embarrassing. I think it's embarrassing. I think it's really embarrassing that that we only have two. There are way more than two. There are hundreds of them, in actual practice, but there are only two that count. Sorry, that makes it sound horrible to all the independents and all of the small parties that are trying to actually do something and make a stamp and get and make a difference. And a lot of those small parties are just about making noise. They're not about actually trying to get someone elected because they know they haven't got a hope in hell. But in America it's Democrats and Republicans. In Great Britain it's Conservatives and Labor. And in Australia, it's Labor and Liberal. And it's weird, the similarities, actually. So, how US US presidents who are Republicans usually wear a red tie. Yeah, and so, Labor prime ministers usually wear a red tie. And blue, Democrats wear blue, Liberals wear blue. I'm not sure about it in the UK, but I suspect it's probably the same. It always makes me think of the Crips and the Bloods. We had this one prime minister for a while. I really liked him, and he got pitched out by his own party, and he got voted in. Australia voted for him, and I liked him for two reasons, or three reasons really. Number one, he was pretty good looking guy, and that always helps, I think, because I really feel like with Australian politics that how well the country runs doesn't really come down to who gets elected. Sorry, I know that they do stuff. I just think that plenty of other people could do it just as well, and in fact could probably do it a whole lot better. So I don't really give them a lot of credit. I don't really think that they're outstanding representatives for the roles that they undertake. I think that we could pluck people out of private industry who would be much, much better. But anyway, but what really irritates me is when we have a prime minister, and we've had quite a few, who are, it's not even unattractive. Attractiveness helps. It's not even about how attractive you are. It's just about your overall gait, your shtick, if you like. And whether you can deliver a speech and sound authentic and sound like it's really what you believe, and how approachable you are, and how I guess charisma has a little bit to do with it. I do think that the prime minister should be charismatic, and we've had a number. In fact, some of our most popular prime ministers have had zero charisma. I just find it embarrassing when I see that, the prime minister's flown off to some other country and met with their head of state, and you see them there shaking hands, and you're just like, I can't believe that this is our country mascot. Oh, I hope they don't think the whole country is like that. Sorry, that was a bit brutal, wasn't it? But anyway, So this prime minister, who was just in Malcolm Turnbull, his name was. He was just quite recently, actually. He was a Liberal candidate, got elected, became prime minister. He had as his two IC, a woman called Julie Bishop, whose political career I followed very closely, actually, because she's a Perth girl, and she started out actually by being the girlfriend of the Lord Mayor of Perth City, who was substantially older than her. And I never really understood their relationship, and then when their relationship ended, she made a run for local politics. So she went literally, she did local, then she did state, then she went for federal, and And so Malcolm Turnbull, when he became Prime Minister, wanted her as his kind of 2IC. So I can't remember what exactly her portfolio was, but Julie Bishop. Anyway, so I really liked the two of them. I thought they were great. And then they just one day just, sorry guys, the rest of the party doesn't like you anymore. So they booted him out and put Scott Morrison in instead. And was it Scott Morrison? Yeah, I think so. Anyway, yeah. And then and then the next election rolls around and we vote in the Labor candidate we've still got the same Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. But anyway, back to Malcolm Turnbull. He used to wear yellow ties, and that was one of the reasons that I always particularly liked him, because I was like, you go, man, because you're a good looking guy, and you happen to know that colour suits you, and I'll bet that's why you wear yellow ties, or maybe it's because you think the whole red blue tie thing is just stupid. Because it is. Anyway, I've gotten so far off topic. Oh God, mind you, I got so far off topic. But if I'm talking about lying and I'm talking about politics, well, yeah, if I had $1 for every time I heard a politician tell an absolute whopper of a lie. The best one ever in my living memory. Bob Hawke, who was a very, very popular, and I have to say, I mean, I was too young at the time to really understand this, but like looking back historically, he was a great Prime Minister. He was a Labor Prime Minister. He did the job for 8 years. He was a real Aussie bloke. He was a Rhodes Scholar. Talked with a thick Australian accent. He was a funny, not deliberately humorous, I don't think, but he also get this, he held the record, the Australian record at least, for sculling a yard of beer from back at his university days. He held the record for the fastest time to scull a yard of beer. but he quit drinking before he got into before it went. I actually think he was still drinking through some of his political career, but then he quit drinking before he became Prime Minister. So yeah, but look, just because he sculled yards of, was competitive drinking at university doesn't mean that he had an alcohol problem. I mean, the fact is that like very, very few university students don't engage in binge drinking whilst they're there. And not all of them, in fact, very few of them go on to develop serious concerns with alcohol. Yeah, so he was a real character, and he was a good Prime Minister. But one year in the lead up to he'd done his 4 years, and he was running again for the second term. And in the lead up to the election, he must have been pretty desperate. And I don't know, I was too young to be following it. I don't know what was going on. All I know was that in the final kind of throes toward lead up towards the election, he started making some wild election promises, like wild. And this was the one that got me, was like, and I'll try and do the voice. No Australian child will be living in poverty by the year 1990. Now, I mean, so this would have been, 1986 or 87, I think, probably. So I was about 12, 13 years old, something like that. So I was old enough to understand a little bit, but not really old enough to understand much. And even I knew that that was a load of hot air. I mean, what a ridiculous thing to like have as an election promise. No Australian child will be living in poverty. Like, I mean, even if it was theoretically possible to implement a scheme to elevate struggling families over the poverty line through just massive like increases in social security benefits and stuff, there are still going to be heaps of children who slip through the cracks, who fall, go under the radar because their families, don't even, aren't even on welfare or whatever, who are living in poverty. And oh mate, oh, it was so funny. It was so funny. It was hilarious. Anyway, he did get voted in, and he didn't do a damn thing about social welfare. I don't think. He made a couple of other stupid election promises. He must have just had a moment of like, there must have been some stupid poll or something, and the polls are always highly inaccurate, as we know. He must have like panicked because the polls were saying he was going to lose or something, and so he thought he'd be just better throw a couple of final promises in there before the vote went out. But I've noticed since then that they don't usually make promises these days. They sort of will talk in general terms about what they want to do. Oh yeah, like make Australia great again. We're gonna create jobs. We're gonna lower inflation. We're gonna blah 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 blah. But that's what they all say. That's literally what they all say. It's no different from reading your horoscope in the TV guide, It's like it's so predictable. I mean, of course, as the Prime Minister, you're going to try and keep unemployment low. You're going to try and keep, inflation low. You're going to, try and help first homeowners or, families or whatever. I mean, of course, that those are just things that you have to do when you're Prime Minister. Those are just like sort of like prerequisites of the job, It shouldn't be a part of your campaign to say, I'll make sure we've got enough hospitals and roads. Well, I mean, you better bloody well. I certainly hope you do. Because that's why we give you all that money in our taxes, is so that you do that sort of shit. Anyway, all right, I'm so far off topic. Oh God, I should probably just end this and just upload it and just let it fly. And God, I feel like these podcasts are getting more and more unstructured. All right, so the question was, why do we lie? And the answer, in my opinion, and I've done a bit of research on this, so it's an educated opinion, but it's still just my opinion. We lie for two main reasons. One is because it's easiest. It's the easiest thing to do. And we don't care enough about the person that we're lying to tell them the truth, so we just tell them whatever is the most convenient thing to stop them from interrogating us or get them out of our hair or whatever. Alternately, we lie because we are ashamed to admit the truth in some way. We are either ashamed or we are fearful of what would happen if we admit the truth. And that's the type of lying that is obviously much more problematic. And it's the type of lying that I think from the perspective of someone who's like trying to, just incrementally find ways to grow as a person and to learn about themselves and to learn, ways in which they might be able to have better relationships and have, just generally a better quality of their life and also, move their life in the direction that they would like to and be more content and just be more at ease and at peace with themselves. That second type of lying is the type that really needs to be addressed. Now, if you're lying because you're fearful of what will happen, if you answer truthfully, you may well be in an abusive relationship. I mean, unless you are completely concocting a story in your head about how this person might respond that's not actually based on, previous experience or evidence or anything. Or, I mean, for that matter, it could be that you're lying out of fear because a previous partner has been abusive. So, but if you're lying and the reason behind it is fear, you need to look at the relationship and really ask and really, really get honest with yourself and get real with yourself about why don't I trust this person? Why don't I feel like I can tell this person the truth without it, having ramifications for me? Because often that's how the cycle of abuse, that's sort of early stage red flag stuff in the cycle of abuse, Where have you been all day? Oh, I went to visit my mother, I told ya. Oh, there's no way you went to see your mother for 8 hours. Yeah, I did, as a matter of fact. I went by there. I took her to the bank. We went and had lunch. We went and had our nails done. Then I took her back home. Then I cooked her dinner. In fact, I cooked her 5 dinners. Put 4 of them in the freezer. 1 in the fridge for tonight. Kissed her goodbye, and I came back here. Well, this morning you didn't say you were going to be gone all day. I said, well, to be honest, I didn't think I would be gone all day, but that's just the way it worked out. I think you're lying. Well, I'm not lying. Do you want to call my mother? Yeah. What's her number? Fuck you. You can't have my mother's number. You can't have my mother's number. You can't have my mother's address either. Because I can go wherever I want and do whatever I want. And if you seem to think in some way that it's not okay for me to go away and do something all day without you knowing all of the intimate details about it and then wanting to verify my story, then you are an abuser. And this relationship, although it may not feel that toxic just yet, is going to get toxic, and that the degree and extent to which it's toxic is only going to increase from here. I will at some stage do a video about domestic violence and my experience with domestic violence. I'm at the point with it now where I can talk about it. I still get emotional, but I can talk about it now, and I can talk about it in quite a frank and quite a sort of I think in a way that's not completely just awash with just emotions. Use words other than, oh, that fucking bastard, oh, he screwed me, I mean, I actually have quite an objective outlook now on the whole thing, and I can see where I went wrong. I can see how I contributed. I can see how, certainly, I can certainly see the red flags. I can also see, I also have empathy for his situation and have what I believe to be a rudimentary understanding of how it came to be that he was able to be so abusive towards me, based on his own past traumas, not justifying what he did in any way, shape or form, but we are shaped by our past. And I do believe that most of this stuff at the end of the day boils down to poor coping strategies or no coping strategies. Plus attachment. He had anxious attachment up the wazoo. Me, avoidant, not a good combination. Anyway, so I think that those are the two main reasons that people lie. They either lie, as I said, because it's easy, and or because they know that if they're not going to get what they want if they don't tell the lie, or they lie because they have some either shame around the truth or fear around the truth. And it's really only the latter two that I think you need to worry about. If you lie to the government about how much money you've got in the bank so you can get Centrelink allowance because you don't have an income, and they're just assholes. You don't have to worry too much about that one, in my opinion. Oh God, I just totally went and endorsed bloody defrauding the government on my blog. Don't defraud the government. I'm just saying that if you've told lies to people because you were aware of the fact that if you didn't tell that if you told them the truth, then you would not be able to access whatever the service it was that you were trying to access as fast or at all. I don't think that's the worst thing in the world if you truly believe that you needed the service and you went on to use it. If you're lying because there are things in your life that you're ashamed of, that's a big problem. Shame will sit on your shoulders. You can see someone who's carrying shame from 100 miles, honestly. And I can sit here and tell you this, right? You have nothing to be ashamed about. You may have done some terrible things in your life. I've done some pretty awful things in my life. I've done some pretty bad things in my life. I've betrayed people. I've stolen from people. I sold drugs. I used to sell drugs. I've done some pretty bad things in my life. I'm not ashamed of any of them. That's not the same thing. That's not to say, though, that I endorse any of the things that I did, or that I don't feel like I've got some major, that I have to rebuild trust, with certain people, doesn't mean that I don't have to make amends with certain people, which I've already done, but, but if maybe if it was you, then, you making amends is something that is a fundamental part of any sort of recovery process, not just drugs. Shame in general, shame and guilt are just two emotions that we don't need to bear. They only make us sick, and they do not serve us at all. They don't serve us at all. And I know it's very easy to say, just get rid of your shame and you need to find a way to work around. You need to find a way, first of all, to accept the fact that whatever you did, it's done. You did it, right? You might, if you could go back, you might do it differently, but what's done is done. It is what it is. You've got to meet yourself where you're at and meet everybody else at where they're at as well. And so if you've done something that has caused a rift in your family or something, and you've got maybe an adult child who doesn't talk to you as a result, you've got to start in this spot right here and work from there. Stop blaming yourself, stop feeling ashamed, and stop feeling guilty about whatever it is that you did, and instead start focusing on how you can rebuild trust, how you can make amends appropriately for things that you've done, and how you can just make sure that the person that you are moving forward is someone who will never behave like that again. Because that's what people want more than anything. Especially children. Children who grow up with parents who are drug addicts and sell drugs and are in and out of jail and stuff, they always say the same things. They always say the same sort of thing to their parents, when their parents get out of jail, which is, you're not going to go back, are you? And it's, oh, no, darling, of course I'm not going to go back. I'm never going to go back. Oh, yeah, that's good because, I really need you here. We really need you here. The family's not the same without you kind of thing. And, and so then when they do go back to jail, they're just full of shame and guilt. They're just so depressed all the time, because of guilt over the fact that they've left their children again. They chose drugs over their children again, and breaking that cycle, coming out of it, all that those children want to see from their parents. It's it's not about the apologies or the making up for it time or gifts or anything else. It's about needing to see a change in their parent that they can believe in enough such that they're not going to have it just be an assumption in the back of their mind that any day now mum's going back to jail. Because they'll believe you the first time when you get out and you say you're never going back. The second time, maybe. By the third time, kids aren't stupid. Kids aren't gonna keep buying that shit, and it hurts so much. It hurts them so much that they're not going to allow themselves to become re-traumatized. And guess what that means? That means that they're gonna stop. That means that they're gonna put up barriers. They're gonna put up boundaries, emotional boundaries with you, so that they don't feel as close to you, so that it doesn't hurt as much when you're gone. So if you want to repair that relationship, and it doesn't just have to be, that's just one situation that I drew from. But there are plenty of situations where we have done something that we're ashamed of, and that person is still out there somewhere, and maybe we're in contact with them, maybe we're not, maybe they have blocked us, because they didn't want to have anything to do with us. All that you can do is get yourself better so that when and if they do take your call again and hear your apology, you can then back that up with consistency by being authentic, by showing them that you really have made a change this time, and that it's not just I'm not just doing this to try and alleviate how guilty I feel for a quick second, and then, it's walking the walk is always much more powerful. So think about that anyway, and think about the president if you want. or the Prime Minister. Think about politics all you want. Think about anything. Think about whatever you want. Do whatever you want. Your life is your own. Reclaim your own agency. I'm actually gonna do a video on agency actually at some point. A lot of us have given up our agency, one way or another. Reclaiming your own agency can be one of the most powerful things that you can do. Depending on the structural composition of your life, it can be sometimes harder than others, but it's actually usually not quite as hard as it seems like it might be from sitting on the, from the other side. And you can start with small things and then build your way up. And as you do that, you build self-confidence and you build, start to become more empowered. And then once you've practiced with a few sort of small things, you can try some bigger things. And then, everyone should be 100% in charge of their own life, their own choices, should be doing what they choose to do because they choose to do it. And if there's anybody out there who has a problem with the things that you choose to do, there may be ramifications for you for that. But if you have confidence in yourself and what you're doing and the reasons that you're doing it, and especially if the reasons that you're doing it align with your core values and your beliefs and what and your plans, your goals for your future, then when those people come knocking and say, hey, no, you're not doing that, not supposed to be doing that, then you will have the self-belief to be able to navigate your way around that, whatever that may look like, Anyway, okay, all right, enough. Have a good day, everyone. I'll see you next time. Adios.